happy.
Everything is set and ready to roll for prosperity stake. Is that the term we're using now?
Tough. That was tough, right there.
That was tough. I listened back through to the gargantuan. Now I can't do it.
Tough.
I called you out. I came after you, and I wasn't ready. You better be ready. Yeah. So the picture didn't work. So that's good to know. And now this other thing is sitting on the page. Nice. There are people in the other one.
I hate technology.
Yeah, me too sometimes. I think the problem is this.
Yo, we're streaming right now on the YouTube. What are you talking
I'm
about?
aware of that.
Oh, okay.
Everyone is watching this go down.
I thought you...
Thanks, Tom, for the warning. Tom, list your 7 favorite sandwiches in order right now for me.
prosciutto and mutts.
Yeah, legendary.
Any classic Italian. I'm thinking that family. Do a little panini. Yeah, I know what I like and I go for it. So I wouldn't.
So
even
here's
need to
my
go
thing
down to
about
7.
paninis. The reason they're toasted is because the bread is bad. It's a bad bread.
I wouldn't go that far. I see what you're saying, but I like a little toast. I like my sandwich. My sandwich is toasted. If you say hoagies, so help me God, I'm closing my laptop.
No. I'm from Long Island. Why would I?
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
I would say hero. Is that
Jesus
okay?
Christ.
What do you say? Subs?
Yeah.
In Miami, there's a famous sandwich place literally called Sandwich. Oh, apparently I'm a lot quieter than you.
You just gotta ramp it up.
So hang on one second. I'm going to bring myself up or you down.
This has been a good start to the stream.
This
Thank you
has
so
been
much for everybody who's here.
This is basically just a test. And I don't even think we're going to do a show. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. I'm a little upset that Charlie's not in our ear more right now. He just doesn't want to crash things. I'm aware. There was a joke. How do I do this? All right, this is what I want to do. I'm just going to delete this because it didn't work. If I can figure out how to do this. Today's August 8th.
Indeed. Canadian transfer window deadline day.
Nice. YouTube is so intense, they make you guarantee that you know that you're deleting something forever when you do it. All right. Ready? What's up, everybody, and welcome to Soccer Wise. David Goss, Tom Bogert here, ready to close out your week as we talk all things MLS transfer window, Leagues Cup, and everything else in between. I have just come out of a technology hell cycle in a hurricane, inside of a tornado, on top of a shark. So I am ready to rock. I am ready to roll for this one. And Tom, you have been patiently waiting, which is shocking for you.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair to say shocking. I didn't even yell at you once. Didn't even yell at you once. You're welcome.
I was actually worried you weren't here anymore, even though I was staring at you. You're already
the Sir Minty shirt
out?
gave me the vibes.
Nice. That's a strong shirt.
Thank you.
I believe there's some Sir Minty transfer rumors out there that someone was trying to throw into the chat on the last show.
They knew that would make me yell. There are no rumors. He's staying. It's a lifetime contract.
Does he own the building?
It's a good question. He should. Somewhere on the masthead.
Someone has to live in there. There are stadiums that you can live in. Here's my dream. We win the lotto. You get to do this show by yourself. Congratulations. I give you $0.
You said we. You started that with we.
We is just like my life, my world. I'm buying 4 soccer teams around the world, and in all of the stadiums, I'm building an apartment that I live in, and they're all places that I want to be and I want to go. Most likely, Portugal probably on the list. Probably throw something in Rio in there, maybe a little Botafogo. Go a little smaller, can't afford.
John Texter would never sell. Yeah, John Texter would never sell. John Texter would never sell.
That's a good
point.
That's
tough. There you go.
All right, I'll take second division. I don't really care. That's not like
Cancun FC.
Cancun FC could be on that list. And then I would probably, honestly, I would pull like buy a team in Hong Kong or Singapore and then just like blow it out the water. And be like, everyone just come play here. Like I'd probably try and make it like a new Cosmos situation.
Fun.
And be like, everyone when you're 39, just come play here. It's warm. Things are relaxed. We'll do little tours and stuff. We're definitely going to win the Singapore League. That's for sure. We got that on lock, and then we can roll from there. So I would live in a stadium in that setting. Speaking of Cosmos, shout out to the Tampa Bay Rowdies. Shout out to Gabby, who's #1 PR person in the world, for sending me this jersey and all the kind words about Soccer-Wise. We're going to try and cover USL more / as much as we can. It is hard. I watch 150 soccer games a day, and that doesn't really include that much USL. So we are working on finding ways to roll it into the show and talk about it more and more. But we are going to continue covering soccer here in North America. We believe we do it better than anyone. If you agree and you want to get involved, join our Patreon, subscribe to our YouTube page, subscribe to our Twitch, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and join our Patreon so you can get into our Discord. You can join the chat. You get access to the mailbag, which is our Monday show every week. Gets pulled out of that Discord. You can leave voice memos or you can leave written questions, and you can chat with us the entire week while we're watching games. Big stuff going on. We talk during the national team games. We'll talk during the U.S. women's gold medal game. We'll be talking all Leagues Cup and NWSL and MLS season going forward. So that's how you get access to that, and that's how you get involved there. I mentioned some of what we're going to talk about on this show. Let's start with Leagues Cup. 2 games last night. Full slate of games coming up tonight, tomorrow, and across the weekend in the round of 32. Don't understand the hosting privileges. Doesn't matter. It seems like some teams got screwed. Wouldn't be the first time, so wouldn't really be shocked on that one. As we go forward, last night, Austin losing to LAFC 2-0, and then Pumas knocking off Vancouver 2-0. Now, today is the close of the Canadian transfer window. Not in MLS, in Canada specifically. So the American MLS clubs still have more time to make moves. We are going to do a recap of where all the Canadian teams sit right now. So for Vancouver, we're going to talk about them more coming up. They lost 2-0 to Pumas. For Austin, they went to LAFC. They had more of the ball. They gave up a goal in transition. They had more of the ball. They gave up a goal in transition. And they lost 2-0. So that's a script we've seen before for those two teams. Ousmane Bakari got on the field. He has ideas. He's interesting. He's creative. He's bold. It is not connected to anything yet. And that probably is because he's new and just got to the team and is just finding his feet. But some interesting decisions for both these coaches. Giroud was in the building, which got a little bit of a cheer and got a little bit of an excitement. So that's our first taste of the round of 32 here in Leagues Cup. Tom, we've got a couple big games coming up. What are you focused on? What are you going to be locked in for?
Yeah, this isn't the obvious answer. We should have let you go first because, I said it on Tuesday. I can't really explain why. I'm super juiced for San Jose Earthquakes versus Necaxa. I think this is the essence of the Leagues Cup for like the sickos like us. And like San Jose, very bad, been tough season, all of that. I will say they're a fun team to watch, and I stand by that.
All right. I assume you don't want to elaborate anymore on that one.
Was that not enough for you?
No. I mean, you're trying to get me to watch San Jose Necaxa. So
yeah you just say San Jose Necaxa. That's it. Does that not get you in the door?
The electricity. You can see the goosebumps on my arm right now. Yeah, no, you're right. Okay, so that's one. I'm going to say LA Galaxy Seattle. That one's coming up tonight. I believe it's 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. The Galaxy are in a really good moment right now. Seattle have struggled. They've played below their level for a lot of moments. Often you see them elevate for games like this. It's also a really interesting matchup because Seattle are clean defensively. They struggle with their offensive ideas. Pedro de la Vega still injured, will be injured for longer. So they're going to have to figure it out without him. And the Galaxy kind of fit that perfectly, where the Galaxy are a more attacking team. They will leave some openings, but they will go and try and win the game. So this is a fun matchup, I think. There's obviously some good history with this one between the two teams, and then anytime you get them into a knockout setting, like it's always going to be pretty fun to watch and pretty good. Toronto is heading to Miami. That is another one. We're going to talk about the Canadian teams coming up, but that's another one that's interesting. No Messi, obviously, but could have a little bit of juice in that one as well. Are you ready for the ice cream shop then?
Ready for the ice cream shop, David Goss.
All right, let's let it rip then. Let's go.
First one is LA Galaxy goalkeeper Novak Mikovic has handed in a transfer request to the LA Galaxy. He has been lingering upset about playing time, understands it, but it was his understanding that he was going to play all of the Leagues Cup games. And after 2 man of the match performances, he was officially named man of the match in one of the games. I don't know if it was both, but he was absolutely excellent at both of those games. It was told that he was not going to be the starter for this game against the Seattle Sounders. And he said, I'm done, request a transfer, all of this. So that's a situation to watch. That's a situation to monitor. The Galaxy insists that he's part of the long-term plans. They really rate him. They have a plan for him, all of that. And they were like, something to the effect of, we're not even that mad because we understand, like, we want players that desperately want to play that are upset that they're not playing. I'm sure that they would have preferred it to not be a transfer request, but it's not even like they took it personally and said, okay, go train by yourself or whatever, right? Like, so that's a situation to watch. Novak Mikovic in LA Galaxy transfer request.
Who knew the Leagues Cup mattered so much? This is his Leagues Cup. This is his legacy.
Well, he's played
Mark
like 8
Anthony
games.
comes on and he's singing and he's saying, "This is my legacy." He's talking about Leagues Cup in that moment. Yeah, it sucks. He's not playing. I think there probably was a clear idea from him that he would have a chance to contend for the number 1 spot. McCarthy's been good. He hasn't been great. He is not great, as I have said many times. He's a borderline starter in MLS, which is fine and awesome and worth having on your roster for sure. It is interesting that the Galaxy feel like they have to force him back into the team, and like you can't have him have a layoff for 2 weeks to not play and then be healthy for the rest of the year if you think he's the starter. All of this seems very odd, and as you said, I think it's fair to have a player want to get out after all of that. But isn't this a player that they thought would be a goalkeeper of the future for them?
Yeah, like he didn't play much last year when he came on loan. They triggered the purchase option because, hey, we'll put you in a goalkeeper competition. We think you're the goalkeeper of the future, all of that. So John McCarthy earned the job in preseason. I think he's been good this year. Like, I think both of these keepers are good. And that's why, for me, it would have made sense to just, like they do for big clubs abroad. Like, hey, we need to have 2 solid goalkeepers, 2 good goalkeepers. You get the cup competitions. You get the Europa League. And the starting goalkeeper would take the league stuff and then go from there. So I think that's where it really, the straw that broke the camel's back in this instance. And again, requesting a transfer doesn't equal that a transfer is 100% going to happen. Right. What it does do is it alerts teams that, oh, he wants out. Oh, we might need a goalie. Like, let's make an offer. So that'll be one to monitor over the next few weeks. But again, I stress that the Galaxy still say that they have a long-term plan for him and want to make this work.
All right. What's next?
Jean-Philippe Goubemin, that deal has fallen through. It's something I reported on for probably a week ago. I think it was the first time that I said it was on the verge of collapse. I can confirm that the deal fell through because of a failed medical. So Goubemin is not joining the New York Red Bulls. We're going to talk about the Red Bulls later, so I won't go too deep into the context of what it means for the team and what it means for the rest of the next week of their summer transfer window. But I can say that deal is not happening. Ivory Coast international midfielder Jean-Philippe Goubemin is not coming to the New York Red Bulls, which is a little disappointing because I've nailed the name Goubemin from the jump, and it was one of those names that I enjoyed saying. It was like Luis Araujo in Atlanta. I was a little bit upset the day he left, not because he was a good player, but because I liked saying this name and I felt like I nailed it from the beginning, and it's just upsetting.
I also would like to register to have my time returned in which I watch techno-based YouTube videos of Goubemin playing. So there's like about 19 minutes and about 37 seconds of my life that I will now be registering to see if it can be returned to me.
Except that you just would have been dancing to the music rather than focusing on the play style, right? Like, so, I think that you can only get half of that back.
Yeah, that's true. Once I feel the rhythm and the beat in the cortex of my brain, then I just snap into a whole new person. I'm this guy, the Tampa Bay Rowdies guy. I look like a British. No, I look more like a former Polish second division player.
Yes, that's perfect. That is perfect. Yeah.
Also, I
like
clearly play,
a struggling agent.
I also clearly play for their USL2 team, not for the real team. Like, I'm player manager of the USL2 team where we drive a bus to the games and all that stuff. Yeah, potentially Kitman as well. So for sure, frustrating for Red Bulls fans. But as you said, we're going to dig into the Red Bulls coming up in our sort of list of teams that we want to see make moves still in this summer. And one of those moves is obviously going to be for Carlos Vela, who wants to be an MVP in MLS still, right?
No, so I kind of broke down what's going on with Carlos Vela, the latest we know, because we don't know much. Carlos Vela has not played a game since losing MLS Cup with LAFC against the Columbus Crew. It was kind of conventional wisdom for everybody, and even the LAFC players were saying this at the beginning of the season, that we just all thought that they'd find an agreement, LAFC and Carlos Vela. That never happened, and what I'm told is that that's not going to happen. That's, sources were pretty strongly that that's not going to happen to LAFC. There are no talks, and that is not expected to change. An offer from the LA Galaxy, it never came, despite Will Kuntz joining that club. Tom Penn, former club president for LAFC, he's at San Diego. I'm told that there's no active interest at all for San Diego for Carlos Vela. All of that is to say, sources have told me that the idea is if he's going to play again, he wants to be in Los Angeles. And those are the three teams in Southern California. So it looks like things might be it for Carlos Vela, and I want to say it's poetic that Vela has always operated to his own beat, and I love that about him. I respect that about him. He seems happy from just Instagram detecting. He's been in Europe. Again, he was with his family in Colorado on the mountains when LAFC was preparing to open their season in February, and he doesn't feel
the transfer room meeting in Cancun as well with you.
His
drinking
his
Mai
twin
Tais
brother,
by the pool. Yeah.
his twin brother Alejandro, and that was another thing. Sources say that he doesn't really have any interest in going to Mexico. Not even for his hometown Cancun FC. Granted, they're in the second division. That'd be a little weird to see Carlos Vela turning up in the second division. But if anywhere, it'd be at his hometown club. Plus, his brother is the sporting director, and that's not something that interests him. So, Vela is happy. There's always been the talks of, does he really love soccer? Does he all this? And that's all fair. So he's not just going to come out of retirement to go play in, a mid-table Dutch team or something, right? And hell, even around MLS, he considered San Jose Earthquakes. That never happened. And now it's even probably if they put out whatever the money is that he was asking for, it's not a guarantee that he would say yes at this point. He hasn't announced anything. And the front end of this is that as long as he's happy, I love that he's choosing to do this his own way. The other side is just that I really wish that this legend got his farewell, because he is one of the best players this league has ever seen. The 2019 season, best individual season in league history. This player is an icon for MLS. He's obviously an icon for LAFC. He was the face of that club for 6 years. And I did this story partly because asking around, hey, is there any chance he comes back? Who knows, whatever, right? Carlos being Carlos. And then the other side of it was we should be talking about this guy as a legend, and he should get a proper farewell, whether he wants one or not. So that's where it is with Carlos Vela.
My assumption is when it becomes official that he won't play, LAFC will then do it, whether it's putting his number up or whatever they do. I think for LAFC, you're not going to jump and do it, and then he's playing for the Galaxy 2 months later. And I think they would still do it if that happens, right? If he plays for the Galaxy, retires, LAFC is still going to honor him in whatever way they do. You just probably wouldn't do it right now. Honestly,
absolutely.
There's a wild world probably here in which, if I'm San Diego, I don't need to sign him now. I'm not building around him. He's not a keystone piece.
Yeah.
But if at the end of this year he hasn't signed and he's here's X money that I would take to sort of be on your team and be around it, why wouldn't you build the buzz? And I'm not putting him in a TAM conversation. If he's willing to play for less,
I would doubt.
Be around.
I would doubt that. He wasn't going to accept TAM from San Jose. The reason why LAFC didn't happen in the winter is because he was pretty insistent on a DP deal, and LAFC were no, come on, hey, we've had this great relationship. You got to trust us. We can't. And, I think that he's going to be a club ambassador one day. I like something like that. And like you said, Goss, I think it's more about there being an official announcement, or whether there's an official announcement, if it's 2 years from now and he hasn't played, I think, announce his retirement or not, I think that then that might be time. But yeah, I think that he's going to be involved with the LAFC organization in some way in the future. And maybe that's just me looking for the poetic ending and looking for the storybook ending that, a legend gets to be with the club and all that. So maybe that's not guaranteed, but yeah, they do still love him. I just don't think that they're going to offer him a big time contract.
Yeah. As you said, his whole career has been weird. His whole time with LAFC he came early, he was great. the way the contract was lined up, ending in summers was bizarre, and like it has been
Leverage.
bizarre throughout. And in the end, though, he is a large part of the success of the club, like from the get-go, of like
Yep.
the fans being engaged, the
Yep.
city being engaged, the team being successful out the gate. Like he is a large part of all of that, and he's going to have a pretty big legacy because it feels like now they are one of the big clubs, the staples in MLS. All right, anything else to finish out on?
Yeah, just a last quick one. Orlando City could not agree a deal with Christiansen for Norway Youth International midfielder Heine Gilkling Rusev. The good news here is, unlike Gubamin, I have not mastered any of these words here, so I'm glad that hopefully this is the last time I'm going to have to be talking about it. The talks are inactive right now. What I was told, sources in Orlando were like, it's not going to happen, and I don't think this is a negotiating ploy, but just going to cover myself by saying talks are inactive right now. There are some multiple bids rejected. The Norwegian club would not budge on their valuation, and neither would Orlando, so this deal at the moment is not going to happen.
Okay, we did have a question in the chat asking how do you fail a medical?
He's still alive. I want to point out
Yeah.
that he did not die. So that's something that came up in the Discord. It's like you can't fail medical unless you pass away. That's not it. It's just they didn't believe in. Again, I don't want to speculate on specific.
Here I'll give non-speculation on this, but stories about what happens. You are doing medicals sometimes on injuries that have already occurred to see where their status is, and different doctors and medical professionals and clubs have different barometers of what they find acceptable. So like if you have had an ACL surgery in the past and they check some of that, they won't feel like maybe it's fully healed, or they won't feel like the surgery was done in a way that can be safe. There are also other medical things that occur which are different based off countries and federations checking. So for example, I think we all learned a lot after Christian Eriksen and what happened with him. There are different things that different countries are checking for out the gate, which you could be shocked that that player has lived their whole life not knowing.
Right,
Different different sports teams. It's even happened I think it's happened inside the NBA, where a player gets traded and they have a heart condition that one team won't clear and the doctors won't clear, and they've been playing. Like that stuff can happen still. So we have zero idea what this story is, but those are some of the examples of what has happened in the past and what could happen for a player. Or with this player in particular being a free agent, he may have gotten hurt at the end of the year. He's been rehabbing on his own, so you had zero idea in terms of like where his level was, and now you're bringing him in to do it yourself going forward. But it is a tough one for the Red Bulls. Tom, we wanted to do who do we need to see make moves going forward? Who are we watching? And you have a different scenario here for me and everyone else. Who are we bookmarking when we see your stuff pop up, the names we're looking for? You're the one who has to report it, so your experience is a little bit different there. And the Red Bulls, I think, we're pretty high up on both of our lists.
Yeah, so for this one, it was teams that I'm looking at that needs to make moves this summer, and you could say that about just about all teams. Everybody's trying to get better at all times, right? But the way that I view this in terms of this conversation is the teams have to be good, because you can make moves to get ready for next year. All of these clubs need to do that. But two teams that we'll get to for me, and I think you have two as well, I don't know, that I think need to make moves. Red Bulls is the first one that comes to mind for me. I think that this team has the possibility to be very, very good. What I was told is that central midfielder still, with Gubamin not coming, and a U22 forward are the two kind of top priorities for the Red Bulls. They hope that they can get deals done for players at both positions. Nothing is imminent as far as I understand, and they're still working on it. They have 6 days here left for the transfer window. So the New York Red Bulls, because they have a chance right now to be in a win-now mode. As long as Emil Forsberg comes back, and I believe he's coming back either for the first MLS game after the Leagues Cup break ends because the Red Bulls are eliminated, or some point shortly after. This is not a season-ending injury or oh man, I hope that he comes back in October. So as long as that's the case, the Red Bulls are very good. Lewis Morgan has been very good. The central midfield depth chart is very thin right now, and they've gotten by over the last couple months since Frankie Amaya was transferred. Obviously, the defense is very good. This team needs to take advantage of this situation and do everything they can to challenge at the top of the Eastern Conference. And you could push back and say that everything they can would be using a third DP spot instead of going two DPs for 2020 initiatives. I agree with that, but I'd be fine if they signed a forward and a central midfielder and nothing less.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the part that you said at the beginning explaining sort of the teams that we thought about in this, of like, we're not talking about Chicago in this conversation. We're talking about teams that can contend. I think that's the part with the Red Bulls that comes like strongest, which is this is the best team they've had in 4 or 5 years. And now is the time to take advantage because Forsberg is not a signing for the future. And so if you think he's coming back and you think he's going to be a part of this group, like there is enough talent there for you to contend this year. I'd say in the playoffs with anyone. That's how good they have been. That's how good the back line is. Coronel's taken a half step back at times, but is still as good as any of the other goalkeepers in the top of the Eastern Conference conversation. That's how dangerous Forsberg's been at times. It is one short in midfield right now, and it is that reliable goal scorer that's not Lewis Morgan, a true natural 9 in this group. You could get by, and you could beat some of these top teams with Forsberg and Morgan being the point of your attack and being enough, but you want to do everything you can to guarantee that you would, and adding another piece in there would be a big part of that. The part that's a little tough is it'll probably be a similar profile to one of the players on their roster because they have every type of forward profile. It just needs to be better. Like we're just talking about pure quality at that point, not cleaner fit.
And that's kind of the disappointment that it's not going to be designated players. Like the U22 initiative, by design, is for high potential, unproven, developmental type of players. So it's unfair to be like, oh, sign a U22 forward and immediately come in and you're the guy that we're looking at. And we're going to talk about Cincy later, but it's the kind of same thing with Kevin Kelsey. Like Kevin Kelsey has not been super productive over the last month. It's unfair to expect him to be their best center forward and the most consistent guy. And same thing with the Red Bulls to bring in a U22 initiative center forward, which again, as far as I understand, is the plan. So yeah, that's disappointing in one end. I do wish that they were going for a full DP or at least a senior player. Like if they could find room for a TAM. Like if Gubamine was going to be able to be bought down with TAM, why not go get a 28-year-old TAM forward if you found one on your list rather than going for a younger profile? Because they have enough unproven options. Like again, at least Morgan is a veteran in his prime. There, Dante Van Zier is as well, but again, it just hasn't quite worked out. And then you already have U22 initiative forward in Elias Manuel. So, like, what is going to be the difference necessarily in the interim? Maybe long term, a new player will be better, could be better, all of that. But
alarm's going off, Tom. Sorry, my Olympics alarm went off. Big events. Okay, continue.
No, but in the interim, I don't think it's fair to be like sign a U22 initiative forward and then bang, like that'll put us over the top. Like it could happen. Don't rule it out, but it'd be silly to expect that. So there is a little bit of disappointment. But again, if they do bring in a central midfielder and a center forward, the team will be better on August 15th than it is right now. And at the very least, that should extend on some goodwill if they get these deals done.
Yep, I agree with you. And that's part of the frustration of not having Gubamine done, which is like you would already be half a step there. It's also a player with that flexibility where then you could have maybe more options at that forward position of saying like, oh, we know what openings we have. We know how his salary is going to descend next year, how we're going to be able to affect it with TAM and all of that. Now you are into mystery box area with the window getting tight on you. So it felt like they'd done some good work early, and then that sort of all went up in smoke, and now they have to deal with it.
I just have one more point to add before I ask you for your team. The Red Bulls are second in MLS in expected goal difference at plus 12.3. They are one of the best teams in the league. I still think that they are one tier below the LAFC, Columbus Crew, Cincinnati, depending on what they do, Inter Miami, et cetera, et cetera. But they are in that second tier, and being in that second tier and having the top-end talent of Emil Forsberg and having the structure and defensive capability of the rest of this roster, being in that second tier is good enough that you should be going all in to compete for a title.
Yeah, I agree with that. Hence, we get to my team, FC Cincinnati. We have said it 15 times, 18 times.
Stole it from me.
Whatever it is. I didn't steal it from you. You specifically said you weren't going to say it.
I did say I was going to say it. And then I was like, well, you haven't written anything down.
We talked about them too much.
Brutal. Brutal. Whatever. Snakes in the grass. Who cares? I'll figure it out. Come on. What about FC Cincinnati?
Oh, now I'm looking at the rundown and realizing.
What about FC Cincinnati? Go ahead.
You did write them down.
You did.
Tom, who's your other team? Let's do 2 and 2.
No. God. David Goss is FC Cincinnati. Go ahead. Why?
No, I don't have any thoughts. I just like saying the name.
So for me, this is a stronger version of the Red Bulls in that they're gonna be very good no matter what. You have Lucho Acosta, you have the defense. Like Chidozie has been an awesome addition in center back in his very limited minutes. You have Miles Robinson, Pavabuka, Obi Moboto, all of that structure, you're going to be very good. They have the flexibility to get out of Bupenza and sign a DP forward to make them stay in that elite top end tier with Miami and Columbus, LAFC, Real Salt Lake, depending on how those signings fit and what everything looks like. So Cincinnati should be going all in. Going here with, we're still here with Bupenza on the roster. That can still change. There have been reports that came out. Some Greek clubs have been in for him. Some other clubs. Like, the idea is to make that happen, and then we'll move on from there.
Tom, you're all over the place on me right now.
I have no idea what happened.
Make sure your microphone is connected.
Okay. So sick it's not. Why would that work?
And I will.
You want to keep talking, or are you just going to stand there in silence?
No, you're good. FC Cincinnati, the other part about this, the other part I think that's really big with them is they have shown the willingness to do this in the past, and they are in a win now mode. Everything about the moves they're already making is a win now situation. Wow. Okay. 200-meter run. Woohoo. So everything about them shows that they would make this move. And that's where, like, you talk about some of these teams, and, you know, I made the joke at the beginning about Chicago, and RG lost. Thank you for getting in the chat and saying Chicago does need to make moves. But, like, yeah, in a dream world, Houston's going to bring in more attacking talent. In a dream world, Colorado's going to spend big on a DP and change their entire team. That's not going to happen. Cincinnati has shown a willingness to do it. They've shown an ability to do it at a higher level than a lot of other people. And so if you take the moves of bringing in a 27-year-old center back, bringing in Miles Robinson, trading for DeAndre Yedlin, like, all the moves they've made have been win now, increase this roster around Lucho at his peak moves. This is the next one. And this is another one that you can make. And so I would love to see this team continue to push things and continue to be competitive.
Yeah, I completely agree there. And again, like, you have an MVP, reigning MVP in Lucho Costa. So you have Luca Oriceno, who's been awesome as, like, a secondary kind of creator. So you need a new big-time consistent center forward, and they have the ability to do that. They need to get rid of Bupenza to make that happen, but they have the ability to do that.
Tom, why don't you leave and come back?
Okay.
Tom was very quick and very ready to leave. I hope anyone else out there who is watching the 200-meter right now feels as sad as I do. And the U.S. not able to get over the line. And that's the only thing we really care about here at SoccerWise right now. Tom, how you doing?
I've been better.
Nice. But you're doing okay right now. So we're going to go from here as we go forward. Any more Cincinnati thoughts that you want to put in before we move?
I don't even know what I said. I don't want to repeat myself.
That's absolutely fair. One of the teams I was going to mention was Charlotte. We have talked about Charlotte a lot because they have clear needs and holes. They are, to me, one of the few teams still in this conversation, if you want to say, top 6 in the two conferences, that have not made any moves to fill their main holes. So that's one of the things when I look at this list, you say LAFC have brought in their center forward. Houston have already brought in their center forward and made that move. We're going to talk about the Canadian sides in a minute. RSL have brought in their number 10. That was the big move you were expecting from them. Columbus doesn't really need to do much. Miami have filled that center back as much as they probably can and don't really have a ton of flexibility behind all of that. So to me, the one that stands out still is Charlotte. And the questions of will it be a 10? Will it be a 9? It doesn't matter. It needs to be a higher level attacking quality, very similar to the conversation we're having with the Red Bulls. And I think they are good enough to contend at the top of the East. I think they're good enough if they bring those pieces in. So I would love to see it happen. I would love to see them make that move. We've talked about it a couple of times on this show already because of the talent around it, the quality of the back line, the play and goal so far this year. Abada has been a pretty big hit. Ajamong's obviously the best player in the league. You have potential if you keep Swiderski or not. Whatever it is, you have the opening and you have the ability to make that move. And so I would like to see that happen for this club.
I agree, and that's the plan. I've been trying to get updates today. We'll see. There's a report from Top Bin 90 that Brecht Diakhe is leaving. That frees up a lot of space as well. So far, it's been a good window for Charlotte FC. There's a question in the chat for the emoji crown. Any news on Idan Toklamati? Yeah, deal's done. I think that they're just waiting to see what the best way to structure it is in terms of the salary cap, in terms of just little details like that. But he's going to be signed by Charlotte FC. It just depends on what happens over the next few days, if there are other moves to happen, and what they want to do with the salary cap flexibility and everything else.
Brecht is on 1.2 million and has a guaranteed year next year. That would be a huge contract to get out of.
Yeah, I mean, they'll probably have to eat some of that and stuff like I don't know. I don't have any details on this, but it makes sense that they are looking to move on from this. I'm pulling up his page right now. I can't imagine his goals plus assists is over 5. Yeah, 2 goals, 2 assists in 29 appearances.
It's good money if you can get it, you know? Listen, as a former Polish second division professional who is now biding my time in USL 2, I would take it if I could get it on those numbers in that position. That would be a big one for Charlotte. And if you want to have the depth charts and the salary cap tables right in front of you, like I did, you can go and subscribe to our Patreon. It comes with Discord access and access to the SoccerWise depth charts. It is the easiest way to see it. I can bring it up and know that Brecht Teixeira is the third highest paid player. Diadre, whatever, is the third. I don't have pronunciations on here. Is the third highest paid player on this roster, where he sits exactly where this team is and all those things, especially with the transfer window open right now. Super helpful, super interesting for all of this. I don't really have a second team because I would say there's no one I expect to make a move. NYCFC would be a big one. It's not going to happen. Like, they're not going to go out and get an experienced player. It's just not who they are. It's not in their DNA. We have question in the chat about Talis Magno. We don't know if he's off the DP deal or not because we don't know the exact details of the move to Brazil. My understanding is that MLS will, like they did already this year, publish this information when the window is officially closed and all the moves are actually technically done. So if you've been paying attention, MLS is on MLSsoccer.com sort of released it earlier in the year, the roster status of most players. We should have an understanding of what that roster status is after the window closes. So we would learn something like that at that point. But they would be the one big team besides the ones we've already named that have to make moves because for the most part, as I've said, the other ones already have, except for the Canadian sides. So let's go to Canada. Oh, Canada, baby. It is the final day of the transfer window. Our home and native land, true Patriots love, all those types of things. Let's break down where these Canadian teams stand as they now exit the window. They have a few more hours to try and make some moves happen. You, of course, have been on your phone for the last 45 minutes while I've been trying to talk to you, checking to make sure none of those moves have happened while we are sitting here. Let's break down the 3 teams, what they've done, where they stand, and let's have you start.
I need to leave and come back again because my mic is apparently not working. You can start, and I'll be back in a second.
Okay. We have the biggest news we have gotten over the last 24 hours is with Montreal. So Montreal would be the biggest one. Caden Clark has just been traded to the Montreal, to CF Montreal. I almost did it. They have also, of course, traded off Mason Toy as they start to rework things. Corey Ray now in charge of things on an interim basis for that club. And so he is sort of trying to get his arms around this team under a new coach as they figure things out on the fly. Tom, I gave a little Caden Clark news while you were gone, as well as some Mason Toy drops. Is there anything else you want to add about this Montreal team?
No, nothing. Like the MO for this summer was more about clearing the salary cap, evolving the roster, moving forward, evolving the team. They had a lot of players on the roster. They are looking for, like this summer, it made sense that they went for Caden Clark, right? That it's a super low risk, no risk, more or less, bringing in a player that had talent, has potential that he hasn't realized over the last few years. I don't know if he's ever going to, but I love the roll of the dice by Montreal to get that player in and just bring in some high potential players if you can without, again, compromising much of anything. No future flexibility was lost. No allocation money was really in this one. I think it was $50K plus a second round pick. That's nothing. You take a roll of the dice for basically for free for the purpose of taking Caden Clark's roster spot and his contract off of Minnesota, who are looking to evolve the roster themselves. And Caden Clark very clearly didn't fit. He is not a wingback. He had played wingback a decent amount. Montreal view him centrally. whether that's, in the 2 line of the 3-4-2-1, or maybe in the future a little bit further back as an 8. But we'll see. I like the roll of the dice. I'm not sure if he's ever going to hit his potential, but these are the kind of moves that I saw coming from Montreal, rather than say, oh, we need to bring a 29-year-old so we can hopefully pick up, 4 more points and claw closer to the playoff line. Like, this was a long-term view in the summer, and I think it was much more about shedding contracts like Mason Toye, and they could still do that over the next week or the next month, depending on where the transfers go. The transfer window deadline only impacts the team that's signing the player. So after today, Canadian clubs cannot sign a transfer for a player. They can sign free agents, but they can't acquire somebody via transfer. But they can transfer away their players if an offer comes in from another MLS team or a team from Europe or South America or wherever.
I also believe they can trade between the 3 of them, because the MLS roster freeze has not occurred and the player would already be registered inside of Canada.
I have no idea.
Yeah,
I mean,
I know.
why make it simple? Like, thank you,
Right.
Canadian Federation, for changing this.
Someone said that to me, and I believe they are correct. So that is the one.
No, it sounds right, but it's just like one of those frustrating points. Like, I understand the whole idea, the whole point of, things not being super consistent or things being a little bit convoluted. And usually I push back sometimes where it's like, dude, like, NBA has mid-level exception and nobody like bats an eye at it. Franchise tag in NFL. This is so insanely dumb and infuriating that, like, and again, this is driven by the Canadian Federation. It wasn't like in CPL. This wasn't, and I'm like, MLS found out about it like as it was happening, more or less. Yeah. Same thing with the Canadian MLS clubs, from what I was told. So it's just one of those where it's just like, hands up, indefensible. It sucks. It's unfortunate. Hopefully it changes in the future.
Yeah. So Caden Clark, he's got 1 year left guaranteed on his deal, $345,000 on the roster. 21 years old. I like that you hear from Montreal where he's going to play. I think he's an 8. I have thought that even with the goal scoring with the Red Bulls, from watching him play basically up through academy years into 2 teams and the pro ranks. He covers a ton of ground. He's in incredible shape. He's really clean on the ball. I think he's good in tight spaces and under pressure. I don't think he's a pure chance creator. And so in the pressing system, it worked, and he's a decent finisher in high leverage moments. But when you take him out of that, or when you make him play in other positions, I think he has struggled a bit. And so I would love to see him in those 8 roles with Montreal. It is also a setup for Montreal where they've played Ismail Kone as a 10. They've played Nathan Saliba as a 10. They don't ask as much responsibility of pure attacking creativity out of those spots. And so this feels like a good place for Caden Clark to end up, to try and restart himself and restart his career. Clearly it wasn't going to happen in Minnesota, and that's a decent chunk of money for Minnesota to get off the books for a player that they weren't going to really use, and it frees it up for next year for them to open up the books to try and continue to bring in more talent.
Yeah, it makes sense on both ends of this for the 2 teams, and why I get the motivations for both sides, and hopefully for the player it works out, because again, like, this is a kid who broke through Red Bulls, and RB Leipzig, that was the first player they brought from the Red Bulls since Tyler Adams, I believe, and they haven't brought anybody since. So this isn't like a thing where they just bring over every highly talented academy graduate, or I know Caden Clark wasn't from the Red Bulls Academy, you get my point. Any high potential talented young player, just like, all right, hey, if we bring 12 and 2 work out, that's good enough for us. Like, right. They don't do that often, and so this is a player who was viewed in that light. Like, they could have sent him to Salzburg instead. They didn't, right? Like, so it hasn't worked out for him in any way pretty much since that deal was signed. Even when he came back to the Red Bulls after he had appendicitis, it's just been nothing since then. And again, I hope that it works out for him in Montreal.
So Montreal, 11th right now in the Eastern Conference, so 2 spots out of the playoffs. They are into the knockout rounds of the Leagues Cup. They'll play against the Philadelphia Union. In this round of 32, if they were to win, they would play against the winner of Cincinnati and Santos Laguna. So not an easy road in that competition for them. They've had some success against Cincinnati, oddly enough, over the past 2 years, off and on, even with their lack of success at times going forward. Is this a team that you think contends for a playoff spot?
Not really. Again, it's MLS, so anybody can and anybody should. They're 1 point behind Atlanta. Like, I think the strongest thing I could say for their playoff contention is that let's start with that. 2 of Toronto, Atlanta, Philly, Montreal, Nashville, DC, Chicago, New England. 2 of those teams have to make the playoffs. Philly is probably the strongest, and like probably Toronto. But like, even if it's Montreal and Chicago, or if it's New England and Chicago, who are the two last teams. DC, any combination of these two, I'll be like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So on their quality and what their goals are, again, like their goals are more long term. Obviously, they want to make the playoffs, but they're not gonna sacrifice future flexibility to try to gain a couple points at the end of this window. That's the best I can say about it because this is I don't know, man. If you're Inter Miami or Columbus or Cincy, whoever tops the Eastern Conference, I don't care who gets into that play-in game. Like you're licking your lips.
Let me add this because I love a roster read. Classic Mike and the Mad Dog. Montreal, they have New England. They go to Cincinnati, and then after that, they don't play a single team that is in home playoff position for the rest of the season. So if you're going to pick a team in this convo, they probably have the best run up to get there. It's Charlotte, at New England, Chicago, San Jose, at Atlanta, at Charlotte, and NYCFC to close the year for Montreal. Where for Philly, they go to Red Bulls, they go to Miami, they go to NYC, they go to Columbus, they go to Orlando. It is a brutal stretch, and Philly finishes at Cincinnati. So on strength of schedule, Montreal has the potential to jump at least Philadelphia. On strength of schedule, I would say they have the ability to jump Atlanta as well. Whether it actually happens, that is a different story. They would need to string together some results. It does feel like, I think the hope is coming out of Leagues Cup, that you've had a coach in place for a little bit longer. You're starting to bring some younger pieces in that want to be there or have the opportunities where they're going to be playing with some energy because this is their new chance, like a Caden Clark. I think there's some okay vibes for Montreal going forward. And I think that's one of the things that they'll sort of try and lean on as they head into this. I've got Vancouver assigned to me because Tom doesn't go west of the Poconos. So he's not allowed to talk about any team all the way out there in the wilderness. Do you have an update on anything Vancouver before I get into this?
I do not, though. Before we jumped on the show, they seemed to tease that a signing was coming, and I don't know if since we started talking that anything happened.
That signing would be big because that signing would be the only signing they would have made in this window. They've made zero moves.
Never mind. That's obvious. It's the wingback that I've reported on, and I've already forgot his name.
There you go. So Tom is where you get that news, unless you're talking to Tom directly. It's
tough. It's admittedly tough. Not my best work here.
It is tough. They dropped Javain Brown. That was the other thing for this team. Otherwise, they are pretty much standing pat. You saw in the Pumas loss part of the problems for this team, which is final third finishing, final third quality. They get themselves in some really dangerous spots. They have a clear idea of where they want to win the game, how they can go about winning it, especially when they're at home. And then not able to execute. And that lack of execution, I think, causes some stress amongst the team. And you start to see them commit more numbers or commit numbers into different areas. And then they give up soft goals in the other direction. The first goal, completely soft. Utvik there, a personal mistake. But it's coming from, he's trying to make more happen in possession along that back line. I think you see that a lot for this Vancouver team. They get a lot out of players. Ali Ahmed has become a Canadian international because of his play there. Sebastian Berhalter is playing his best soccer right now in this group. Vite has shown he could play a little bit deeper, and he's been okay. Levante Johnson looked dangerous yesterday. They get a lot out of all these pieces, but then you go into the conversation. You just jump into the standings, and you look at it. You say Vancouver are fifth right now, and Houston just went out and got a DP center forward for a record fee. They have Ache in their team. They sit right behind them. Colorado, in a similar spot to Vancouver, sit right ahead. RSL, they went out and got an FC Copenhagen in prime, Portuguese number 10. So for Vancouver, I think this year is just another year where they are who they are. They are, I think, a 5th to 7th seed in the Western Conference. They don't beat themselves a ton. They're competitive. When Ryan Gauld is on and everything else is going, they're fun to watch. They're entertaining and they're competitive. But they got knocked out in a home game against an okay Pumas team, but not a great Pumas team because they don't have that match winner. They don't have another piece in there. Brian White got some good looks. All of these players did the things that you'd expect of them. And there's unfortunately too many times, I think, where it's just not enough. So that's where Vancouver sits right now. They are, let me make sure I have this right. They are 5th in the West. 3 points behind Colorado, but 2 games in hand on that one. I believe one of the games in hand is against LAFC, so not the easiest way to go from there. And they've got an up and down run, I think, over the rest of this season. I would be surprised if they didn't make the postseason. I'd also be surprised if they had a home game.
Yeah, and like just looking at the standings, Houston 1 point behind, Seattle 1 point behind, Portland 2 points behind. I think all three of those teams significantly have a higher ceiling than Vancouver. I think Houston. But
also lower floors.
I don't know.
Maybe not Seattle.
It's like when we talk about can we talk about lower floors if Vancouver can't advance in the playoffs? Like no matter who they play of those top 8 teams, I think that they're pretty significantly the underdogs, and like I think that's been my disappointment with them this season is that. It's just the same stuff. Like, I was super positive about them last summer going into winter, whatever. Like, this team is not any better than it has been the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And it was really obvious that this team has a really strong foundation, a good coach, a really good game model, all of that, a lot of great role players, good youth development, good at bringing players, all of this. The eye to sign Ryan Gauld, the eye to trade for Brian White, that's all great. It was so obvious that this team needed another DP. And that's not really on the front office. That's on ownership, right? Like, so I don't even I can't even necessarily criticize the front office. Like, the money's not there. The money's not there. Like, what can you do? Yeah. So it's just disappointing to talk about them when this team should be challenging with Real Salt Lake, Colorado ahead of them. And it's not even like Colorado spent a ton of money. Like Georgi Mihailovic, what was that? three or four, something like that. Vancouver, you're telling me you can't sign $3 or $4 million up for a player? Like, it's just disappointing, man.
And here's the things about Vancouver as well is it's not like a group where you're like, but in a year or two, this player is going to grow and this player is going to grow. Vite probably has some more ceiling to what he's
maybe, but I don't even know at this point.
Fair, and he's been good. For the most part, a lot of the other pieces we're talking about are in their prime. They are who they are, and they are, as you said, a lot of them are really good role players, are really good finds, and they've developed them. But it's not like you look at this team and you say, okay, just keep it together because in a year or two, all of this is going to grow and these guys are going to be this whole other player and, you know, they're young and like we have these clear identity or clear ID pieces that are going to improve. That's not really the case with this team. They are kind of stuck in where they are. And that's where the frustration, I think, for me is with the Javain Brown move where it's like the thing you've done is you've ID'd role players and all these things. Can you trade some of it just to get other assets? Or can you make a Caden Clark trade in something like that and something that could, a piece that could get better going forward? They've done it with Ralph Priso, but like, you should probably be doing 5 of those. If you're a Vancouver and you're saying you're not going to go out and spend a bunch of money, then use what you have, the assets you have, a little bit of depth at some of these positions that other MLS teams struggle at IDing, and try and get some prospects in that can help you going forward.
Or guys, like look up the standings again. Like Real Salt Lake, Colorado Rapids. These aren't exactly the pillars of top spend in the league. They couldn't have like. Again, you have to identify the player, like, all of that, like, well done by Real Salt Lake for Diego Goncalves. Like, Vancouver could not afford a $3 million player from Copenhagen. I don't know what his salary is. It ain't going to be, you know, Lorenzo Insigne, right? Like, so that's just why it's disappointing. This is pretty bare minimum stuff. Like, I would love if they went out and spent $7 to $10 million on a player. I'm not even expecting that because it's not anywhere near reality. So I think that's where I come down to. It's like, if you want to be treated seriously, do serious things. Do the bare minimum. And they're not. And again, it's just like that. Like I lose juice talking about Vancouver because it's like, all right, cool. Like they're gonna make the playoffs. That's awesome. And then they're gonna lose in the first round. Okay, then what? Right? Like, cool. Let's talk about somebody more interesting. Right? Like that's how it usually goes for me.
4 of their last 6 are at home. So that's good for them in terms of this finish. Let me ask you this one quick question. Yeah. Before we get
this is not Matthew Doyle that I'm talking to on this podcast with Richard Greenberg in the chat. I love Matthew's Tampa Bay jersey is the comment. Nice. And I'm very happy. Go on.
Eric Johnson asks, does the 2 DP 4 U22s, 3 or 3 affect clubs this summer or does it start next year? That's an easy answer.
Starts right now. Yeah. So teams need to declare at the end of the transfer window, which they'll be. And so it starts right now.
And on the 2-4-2 setup, the second 2 is for $2 million in discretionary allocation. I believe it's $1 million for the rest of this year.
Correct.
That, and then if you were to redeclare that next year, you get the full $2 million for a full season. So it's prorated.
And up to $2 million. Like that's you don't just get given that by the league. Like your ownership has to put in. Will Vancouver do that? Honest to God, I don't know.
Tom
Honest
found a
God.
way to get re-angry about Vancouver after I just shifted.
What I'm getting angry is I almost touched the mic cord and I looked as like, I swear to God, if I have to jump out of the stream for a third time because this, you know what'd be really cool, David Goss? If basic technology worked. The way I'm talking about basic things and the bare minimum for Vancouver, the bare minimum of this stupid microphone worked. That's what would be nice. It'd be really nice.
I just want you to know that this is one of the last things Tom's doing before going off on a vacation weekend. And this
bachelor party. You can just say bachelor party.
Okay. I didn't know how much you were putting out there for when you pop up on your 11:30 AMA on Sunday, and I didn't know how much you wanted people to know about your mindset.
There's no chance. There is no chance of that.
Let's finish out with TFC, our last Canadian side. Canada. What's the status there? What do you make of what they've done so far?
Yeah, so Toronto, what I've been told is that they're not working on any further transfers. They were linked, rumor, to some U22 initiative player from Belgium. That was much more fake than true. I was told that they looked into the player. They never even made contact or anything. And very clearly, that means that they have not done so since I last worked about that. They've already signed Henry Wingo this summer, and they're considering a couple free agents on the list. Again, I don't know what they will add, if they will add, but they still might make an addition or two after the transfer window closes. But Toronto FC, in a lot of the place for a couple of these other teams, I feel like I'm repeating myself just because of the nature of where this rebuild is. Yeah. They still need to continue overturning this roster. Mm-hmm. What Jason Hernandez and then Sean Rubio, when he joined the front office as well, rejoined the front office, it was awful. I don't think that we've talked about that enough. They had 5 players that, hey, we need to buy out somebody. Well, we have these 5 players that we need to get rid of that we don't think has any value. The only way we can get rid of them is a buyout. So what they've done to overturn this roster, what they've done, again, with John Herdman and the coaching staff with Bernadeschi and Insigne is most important as well. But the fact that they've made so many moves in this calendar year, I think is a real credit to this front office. And they're going to be in a much better salary cap health perspective in the winter. So if they're able to bring in another piece, whether it's a role player, low-level starter, whatever it is, whatever they can do, they could use U22 initiatives. And if they sign U22 initiative players with actual money in the winter, I think you can correctly deduce that the powers that be did not trust Bill Manning to spend any more money. They could have used 3 U22 initiative players on the roster. They were allowed to do that if they wanted to. They did not do that because, from what I understand, the person controlling the purse strings had proven that maybe that wasn't the best idea. So Bill Manning's out. It is fully, well and truly, the current front office, as I say, Jason Hernandez, Sean Rubio, and so I think that they will be able to prove to ownership that, hey, you can give us money again, and it won't be wasted.
I will say this: this year they haven't made a lot of moves in because, as you said, they have to get off all these players.
Yeah,
the players they've brought in, they've done well. Debbie Flores at
really
very little money compared to what they have spent in the past. On $450,000 has been a solid central midfielder. And Matty Longstaff, laugh about it however you want. Obviously, he's got a brother, plays whatever. $215,000. Those are both
good signing, man.
Borderline or true starting central midfielders. They have made the team better. The big hole is center forward for this group, and they just don't have anyone who's a true presence there. They brought in Derek Etienne, who's helped a bit as well. Again, $700,000 for a bit of a veteran.
They're not paying anywhere near that.
Of his whole salary.
Atlanta is paying at least half.
Right. And he's on the books for one more year. So if you have Atlanta covering that for another year, that's not bad for you at all. No. Prince comes off the books this offseason. So you'd hope that they find a way to be able to open up some space to just get a true center forward who can be a presence in the middle, who can make Insigne and Bernadeschi just not have to score and create consistently throughout the team. And you watch this team, you watch the game against Pachuca on this weekend, Osorio, when healthy, is still on his game. Is still dangerous. Richie is still super dangerous and effective. Shaquille Marshall-Ruddy creating that goal as well. There's still a decent amount of talent on this team, but there's not enough of it throughout the roster to be consistent game in and game out. I think that's one of the things that's frustrating. We will see where the drone stuff goes and John Herdman, all of that. That's one of the things you have to continue to follow with this team because it will affect what happens to them. They are currently sitting, if I could have my Eastern Conference up, in 8th place right now in the Eastern Conference, 30 points 2 ahead of Atlanta with 1 more game played. They are 4 points behind Orlando with 1 more game played than them. They will come out of Leagues Cup on the road at Houston. They will play DC, Austin, and Columbus at home. Colorado, Chicago on the road back-to-back. And they finish at home against the New York Red Bulls and Miami, which is a really interesting setup. And they obviously play in Miami tonight in Leagues Cup action. They won their group. Miami finished second, but they're on the road because of last year's results and like where Miami came into the competition seeded. I don't really understand any of that, once again, as I have said, but that is the reality for this team. Is this a Toronto team that you think makes the postseason here in 2024?
I do. I know that they've been super inconsistent, particularly lately. The defense has been very bad, but they do have the talent level. Again, as long as Bernadeschi's playing like this, like I put them ahead of Atlanta, and I put them ahead of every team below them except for Philly, really. So again, 2 of these teams have to make the playoffs, and again, just the fact that we're having this discussion is so far and away a win, right? Like again, it sounds counterintuitive that he's like a team with Insigne and Bernadeschi, like, oh, congrats, you almost made the playoffs, but like this was an absolute dumpster fire, and the fact that, again, we were looking at this last year, like, how do they get out of Bernadeschi and Insigne and just completely tear everything down? I might be getting a piece of information, so.
Ooh. I completely agree with you for Toronto. They've had some good moments at home. They've been fun at times. You saw the crowd, the reaction at the Leagues Cup game. It's one of the better crowds we've actually seen at a Leagues Cup game. And then the experience of you get a homegrown setting up a homegrown for a game-winning goal at the moment, as Tom now has to go break news. So some positive news for this. Of course, he breaks his microphone at the same time. Some positive news for this Toronto team this year. The Leagues Cup game tonight will be interesting. Obviously, no Messi. This is a Toronto team that has a couple injuries themselves, so they're still trying to put the pieces together on the fly at times. One of the big losses is Tyrese Spicer. I said all the players they've added, and they've done so very cheaply. Adding a super draft pick as the number 1 pick, who has fit in really nicely for this team. They had a clear idea of how he could add to this club. A center forward in college, they've played him out as a wingback. He has great size, so he can crash and be a finisher on the far post, and obviously has those instincts. And then you add into that his ability in possession and his ability to cover the ground up and down the sideline. So that is, I think, a few really nice moves for this Toronto team. I agree with Tom that just being in this conversation is a positive. I would say that I don't think they get over the line. When I look at the teams in this race, you talk about a Philadelphia team that's been here before, and while they've had their struggles this year, Baribo's starting to score some goals. I think there's some life in that team now. They might be making a move or two as well. Tom talked about it on the last show to add to that group. Atlanta, my expectation is, well, they've already made 1 move. They will probably make 2 big ones. And so it's hard to have those players in all the time and you know exactly who you are and, you know, be completely coalesced. But to jump a team that you have better points per game on right in front of you, that seems possible for this group. And then you've got Nashville picking up a new coach just behind them as well. And Montreal, I think, cleaning some things up. So I would be surprised if Toronto held everyone off in that Eastern Conference with all of those moves and with all that potential. And even being in the race is probably a positive for them in year 1 of this rebuild, as much as their fans don't want to hear that, because this is a club with bigger expectations and a bigger history as well. That was all we had for the show. So I'm going to hang out here and talk to you all for a minute while we wait on Tom and what he does. As RG Law says, live Tommy Scoops in this one. Henry Elliott screaming about Vancouver Whitecaps. This sounds just like the wedding I went up to this weekend. I'm surprised anyone you know is talking about the Vancouver Whitecaps ever. So shout out to that. Kyle Barnhart bringing in some transfer rumors here. Says Richard Sanchez, a potential move for this FC Cincinnati team. I'm just making sure I'm looking at the right Richard Sanchez in this one. That would be a huge move for this team. It wouldn't exactly make sense as the true center forward that this team we were talking about. And so I'd be a little bit surprised with that one because I don't know that there's a ton of room in central midfield. The other thing is there could be more than 1 move coming. So you could move someone out, bring in another center mid, move out a player potentially, and then use that money to recommit. Tom, you're back.
I am back. Give me another 30 seconds.
Okay, your mic is also broken, which is fine at this point.
I hate everything.
Yeah, the moment you walked away, it happened. I'm talking about fake rumors that no one knows about, so don't worry about it. Daniel Gavura says, do you guys see St. Louis making any more moves? It feels like they will continue to be active, and they will continue to be aggressive with the way they've done things, but they've already made 3 to 4 changes to the starting lineup. That is a lot in one window to do. So I wouldn't expect a ton more from them going forward. Tom, do you want to talk?
I'm ready. Yeah.
What's up?
I can confirm Aaron Bupenza's time with FC Cincinnati is over. Sources tell me. This move opens up a DP spot. I don't know the correct language. I was told it wasn't a buyout. It should be announced at some point, but Aaron Bupenza's time with FC Cincinnati is done.
All right, let's dig into that for a moment here. This is what we've been talking about. So whatever status it occurs in, that opens up a DP spot for this Cincinnati
That is
team.
my understanding per sources, yes.
And so I think the expectation would be at this point that they then fill it, right? You don't make the move
That would be
at
my
this time in the window.
Yes, but like again, I've been saying for weeks the plan is he's going to be gone. The plan is he's going to be gone. And now that has happened.
Okay.
So again, I very much assume that they have been working to sign a designated. Again, hell, we know that they were with trying to sign Weston McKennie. I'm dead certain he wasn't the only player that they were looking at or considering. So it's not like the front office is going like, whoa, we have an open DP spot now, like let's fill it. So again, like the other side of that too is that like it was very clearly untenable with Aaron Bupenza, player and club. I think both sides felt the same. Though, I think that more of the blame here would be on Bupenza. But it's over. Aaron Bupenza no longer player of FC Cincinnati.
This is a wild set of 18 months with this whole thing, right? To bring him in as the replacement for Brandon Vasquez and Brenner, like 2 huge players for this team as they contended. They won a Supporters Shield. He was not involved in some of the biggest moments. We have gone through a bit the issues of showing up late back from international, then showing up late to internationals. Yeah. Then, of course, the fight, which caused the injury for him to be out for a while. And now over the last few weeks with the reports saying Cincinnati saying that he's sick and not in training, and reports saying that he's fine and sort of out and about on the town and not being a part of things. And for Cincinnati, I think what I was saying earlier in the show is like they have shown a commitment to do things like this. A lot of MLS teams, you're stuck with a player at this salary and like you're going to try and win without them and bring in a free agent potentially to fill a little bit of that role or try and make a trade inside of MLS until you can find the right transfer to get off this player. If it potentially is a buyout, like that is a huge outlay of discretionary spending just to remain competitive and remain good. So that's, I think, a big moment for this club, but they have shown that this is who they are over the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, this is a team that's ambitious, a team that wants to win. And again, like the move for Bupenza was ambitious in and of itself. The red flags were well known, but the talent was there. So they thought, hey, maybe we can fix him, right? We have a really strong locker room. We have all of this. We're a team that can do this. So again, like they're not the first MLS team to identify him and consider signing him. There's another team that was like, we just can't do it with all the red flags. And since he rolled, like that's still ambitious, right? Like that they believe, hey, if we get this right, this dude's going to be one of the best players in the league. And I do believe that he had the talent level to do that. But again, very clearly, it didn't work out. And the fact that they got whatever the official wording is going to be, I don't have it on his exit. I got to imagine that they're not. Again, first and foremost, $7 million transfer fee in. They ain't getting that on the way out. Yep. Whatever his salary is, I don't know if they're going to have to, whatever all this. This is a team that says, that's fine, we'll write the check. Let's go again. And I think that is very impressive.
Yeah, so we have him on our salary cap table at $1.8 million, guaranteed for next year as well, and then 2 option years after that. So that's $2.7 million guaranteed already.
And they've been linked with a Club America central midfielder, I was told.
Richard Sanchez was the one that we were going through with the chat as well.
Nothing there. Yeah. Nothing there from what I was told a day or two ago.
Yeah, that signing, as I was saying, wouldn't really make sense to me positionally. The potential at center forward is exciting for this team because they've been this good without Bupenza. Like there's no subtraction It's only addition from this point going forward. So, okay, let me throw this one at you. Window's getting close. You don't have a move to make. Do you think this is a team that would go trade for Raul Ruiz for nothing? Say, we'll take him off your hands?
Absolutely not. What does he?
Really?
How does he fit in this? Well, I mean, all right, absolutely. That's too. I try to be careful and not be too definitive. Like maybe that's happening. Who knows? I'd be very surprised. What about Raul Ruiz' player profile makes sense for FC Cincinnati?
He is a natural, true goal scorer. He has scored goals in the playoffs before. He is a different profile of player than the other forwards you have, but Corey Baird and Sergio Santos have never scored the goals that Rui Diaz has scored.
He's a goal scorer that scored 13 goals in the last 2 years.
Yeah. But he has scored in conference finals and
Gareth
MLS
Bale scored.
Cups.
You want to ring him up?
Who?
Gareth Bale scored. You want to ring him up?
I would.
I would love that, to be fair, but like
if I was FC Cincinnati, I just don't know the golf course situation there.
I would ask our guy Tyler Terrence. He knows the golf course situation there very well in Cincinnati, so we'll have him hook him up. But I will say, which is talking about ambition and all the good things that come from a player leaving like this, is if the master plan was to bring in Raul Ruiz Diaz for Bupenzas, which again I doubt that it is, but if that was the plan, I'd be very disappointed.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think those are moves that I look at where I say these are players that already exist in the league where, like, if someone else needs to get off of them, then that's an option. There are not a lot of those in MLS, but this, I think, would all be secondary to trying to bring in a player from externally right now at this point.
I guess, but again, I'd still say that the plan has been all summer that he was going to leave and there was going to be a TV spot, whether it was a transfer, whatever the language of this is going to be. Whatever you want to say is that, like, so I don't think that, like, I think that they will have had their targets ready. And if the outcome is that they don't sign anybody, I don't think that'll be because they're scrambling. I think it'll just be because the right target, a deal never got done. But that's pure speculation on my part because I haven't had any updates in a few weeks in terms of their summer plans.
Here's the other name I'm going to put out there in MLS if they can't get a move done. Timo Pukki. He doesn't have a future with Minnesota.
I low-key like that. Yeah.
He doesn't have a future with Minnesota. Save the money this year. Open up the spot if you're going to use it or not even. Open up the space for other players to play. He's got an option next year, a team option. Most likely, whoever picks him up isn't going to bring him back. And again, he's a different type of goal scorer. He's more of a natural finisher than the players on your roster.
Yeah. So I didn't know. So you're telling me that it's a contract option for 25 for Pukki?
Yes, that's what that's what our charts say.
Yeah, so all right, because I was gonna say if he was under guaranteed contract for next year, then obviously not. But like, I wouldn't hate that at all. Because like you could look again, like he's not like a tailor-made player for a pressing system.
No,
like, neither is Lucho Acosta, right? Like, and if guys like Yuya Kubo and Corey Baird, like they press really, really well. I think that you can make that work. Again, not the top option, not plan A, all that stuff. But you get like if it was that or nothing, I'd take that. And I know that's not exactly a great testimonial, but like it's a different tune than I was singing on the Ruiz Diaz front.
Shout out to the mint t-shirt for Tom that people are loving out there. This is huge. Breaking news on Soccer Wise.
Do you think
Aaron
this was
Bupenz's time
to make a call? To leave the show and make a call?
Yeah, with FC Cincinnati is done. I'm going to let Tom go. On that note, Tom, you can walk away immediately. Have a great weekend to everyone out there, especially to Tom. I will be back on Monday. Tom might be back on Tuesday. That's questionable and still up in the air from his bachelor party. If he is, we'll be back talking MLS live with you on Tuesday after all of this. Thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you again very, very soon.